Hi, my name is Jacob Lauritzen, and in this video we're going to be talking about verbs. Okay, so in a previous video we talked about what nouns are. Nouns are what the sentence is about. If the sentence can be about that, meaning it can be the subject of a sentence, it could be a noun. Does that make sense? The way we define parts of speech are by what they do, not simply memorizing what the words are. Because sometimes, because English is messed up, words can perform different functions of different parts of speech. So we need to look at what they do instead of what the words are and remember it that way. A little bit trickier, a little more work, but it's ultimately going to help us out a lot more. So when you were in high school, you probably were able to latch on that, verbs are like actions, right? It's like, they're doing something like jumping or walking or running. And that's true. That is one kind of verb. That's also true. That's called an action verb. But we also have what are called state of being verbs. This makes us think of Hamlet and Shakespeare. To be or not to be, that is the question, whether 'tis nobler of the mind to. Anyway, so be is the verb that to be, to not to be, that state of being verbs are based off of. And there's a lot of different versions of it. But it's not describing an action, it's describing a state of being. Like, this is how the current state of this thing is now, or was, or will be. Because verbs are confusing. Verbs also have to deal with tenses, right? Verbs have past tense, they have present tense, they have future tense. Things change because verbs conjugate based on whether they're singular or plural. Not the verbs, but the subject that they're describing. So complicated. So, how do we narrow this down into something that we can understand? Well, let's start by thinking of verbs in a couple different ways. The kinds of verbs we're going to be talking about, and we also have helping verbs, linking verbs, other verbs, right? For the purpose of this class, I just want you to focus about verbs that do things, actions, and verbs that describe a current state of being verbs, okay? There are going to be versions of each of those verbs that follow the rules. These are called regular verbs. There are also going to be versions of each of these that don't follow the rules. These are called irregular verbs. So that means that sometimes they're going to do what you would expect them to do. You make something past tense, you add ed on the end, and you're good. But not every verb does that. And so we simply have to look it up or just learn over time. Okay, now later in the semester we're going to talk about subject-verb agreement. And that's where we're going to really dig into how to change a verb based on whether the subject that it's describing is plural or singular. We're not going to talk about that in this video. But for this video, I want you to pay attention to past tense, present tense, future tense. And yes, to a degree, I want you to pay attention to singular and plural. In fact, I don't know, maybe I'll put a chart up on the screen. This is what the normal conjugation chart might look like. A word like conjugation might be scary. In fact, I didn't run into the word conjugation until I was taking a Spanish class, and I was like, English makes more sense now that I'm studying Spanish, which may or may not make sense to you, but it does. Because sometimes as someone who's native to the English language, we don't pay attention to these things. And we do them without truly understanding why they are or how they are or whatever. So here's an example here of the different versions of one kind of verb. Okay, now here's an example of what be as a verb can be. You see lots of different versions of be, and these can be confusing. Why is it important for you? Well, we need to understand what a verb does at this point in the semester, because verbs enable us to describe the subject. Okay, subject is what the sentence is about. It's the person, place, thing, or idea, concept of what the subject will be about. The predicate, which is the rest of the sentence, describes something about the subject. And that's only possible with a verb. So, because we can narrow down most verbs to either being describing how something, its current state, what it, or what it was, what it is, what it will be, or whether it's performing an action, past, present, or future tense, that also means those are the only ways you can describe a subject. Right? Okay, so let's take me as an example. Teacher, right? The teacher is talking too much. Okay, let's say that's our sentence. The teacher is the subject. Is a state of being verb that is describing the teacher now. But then we also added an action verb after that called talking too much. And so we used both together. One started to help the other, helping verb. Okay, so, but it's verbs that make the description of the subject possible. It's also an indicator that it's the start of the predicate, a start of the description of the subject. So, this is what I want you to do. Hopefully this video confused you. Didn't confuse you. As you watched it, clarified things maybe just a little bit. Read the section about verbs in your book, The Everyday Writer, and do the questions at the end. It's going to be posted onto Web Study. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know, but make sure you watch this video, get completely confused by it, so that when you come to class, you can have good questions. And then maybe I can do better in class to explain this. So I hope this helped. If not, I'll answer it in the questions below or in class. I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.